guys, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another episode of Fossil Friday. Now in today's episode I'm going to be sharing what I found recently when I went hunting last. Now I wanted to take you guys with me actually on the beach, and I brought all my equipment with me, but unfortunately the extension cable I used the night before didn't actually charge anything, so I had all these big plans to like film in person on site, and yeah, just carried all the equipment with me with absolutely no charge. So that was a really infuriating discovery, but I did film some stuff on my phone. There's just not much audio because there was so much wind and waves, and without really a microphone you guys don't actually hear a lot. So hopefully this video will make up for it, showcasing what I found, spliced in with some of the footage of me actually finding it. But it was quite a good day actually, quite successful. A lot of jigsaw puzzles, and kind of those really annoying jigsaw puzzles that, you know, if you buy them second hand and you get to the end and it's like missing one or two pieces. That's how I imagine these are going to be, because they did come out the ground in about 600 pieces. But I like a challenge, and that's what we've got. So let's come into this dark and dingy looking garage, but there's fossils, so it's fine. So this is what I'm dealing with. So when I said jigsaw, I really meant jigsaw. Now I'm hoping that some of these pieces will fit together quite nicely. It's just a case of kind of finding those like common edges. Like I think those two might go together like that. That looks like a clean fit. Then these two I've already put together, but then the rest of it is just chaos. And I mean, look at this pile. I don't even know what to do with it. And when I took them out my rucksack, I had all these little pieces just laying around. So they might be useful, might not be. But this one in particular, I'm going to let it fully dry out, and then I've been advised to actually soak it. So if I get some light on it, it's actually like crystallized inside. I don't know if this piece actually shows it. Let me get a better piece and then actually focus it for you guys. What piece shows it? Okay. So you can see it is crushed but completely crystallized inside. So if I need to let it fully dry out, because this was very wet when I found it. And then what I've been advised to do is almost soak it in water, and hopefully all this mud will kind of flake off. And then we'll see what we're dealing with. But I'm hoping all the pieces will fit together quite nicely. It's just whether I found them all, because we were fighting an incoming tide. So hopefully I've got all the pieces. But it was one of those, it was going to be destroyed by the sea very, very soon if we didn't get it out, and it might survive, so it's worth my time to try. And then I did find some other fossils. So here is the imprint of it, I believe, and a bit of the ribs here. So I should have the rest of the pieces in, I think, this bag. Have a little rummage. That looks like some ribbing to me. Let's take this one out. Oh, look at this. That's quite a nicely preserved outer wall there. So very, very delicate. And then I did find, I have this one here which I need to prep quite quickly because this is extremely fragile. I don't know how well this is going to come out, but you can see it's very nice and, you know, preserved in the layers there. And then I also found this one. Now this is incredibly fragile. Watch this. Like, this is flaking up the fossils at the top here. So I need to almost glue this down and then prep it. Because we've got, this is no longer with us, this fossil. Unfortunately, it's like all flaked away. We've just got this well here. But then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all in a perfect row. Like, how unusual is that? It must have been to do with like the currents at the time, or maybe they got stuck when they died. Like when they fell to the sea floor, they must have like been up against something. It's quite unusual to have them so perfectly lined up like that. And then yeah, just back to the chaotic one. So I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna manage to get this one to piece back together, but hopefully if I can get the big pieces to go together, it'll be fine. But I can't work out where, like this one looks like it should go. Oh, have I literally laid it? Does that go there? No, not quite the right one. So that one must go further round, I think. It's trying to get the ribs to work out what whirl we're dealing with, because some of the pieces are obviously like just small ones like this. So that looks like it's this outer whirl as well. It's just a case of where. But you can kind of see it come together, and that I think is then also the outer whirl, but maybe further round. I'm sure some of you understand the pain of this. So this is going to be a video in probably a week or two where I actually spend probably half a day, or at least, you know, quite a few hours working out which piece goes where, or maybe I should soak them first. It's gonna be a long process, but I thought you guys would like to see nonetheless. Now, I don't think are there any other goodies I found? I did find, so I found a lovely bit of calcite, I believe. So it's just got the lovely formation there. I think it's dog tooth or something like that. It's got a name. So we've got more fossils in the newspaper. So you can see the lovely ribbing here. So these might prep nicely, but they're just going to be fragments. But we'll see how they kind of look like after. Oh, that side's even better. Look at that. So that's nicely preserved, those whorls. So I think even if I just prep part of that fossil, it will be lovely. And then in this little packet here, I believe we've got a gastropod. Aha, we do. Look at this. If I bring you into some daylight, which is really beautifully preserved. I mean, look at the detailing on the base of it there. So it's very fragile, so I need to paraloid this up quite quickly. And I do have another piece to it, so I have the other edge here. But how beautiful is that? I love that you can literally see the detailing on the base of it. Just incredible. And you've got the ribs going around here. It's just it's a beautiful specimen. It might not be perfect, but to me, when that's safely preserved, that's going to be a lovely piece. So yeah, overall, as you can see, a very successful fossil hunting trip. But this big one here is going to be a lot of hard work. So now we get to the fun part of the video where you can actually see me exploring around the coast. Now, as you can see, there was just ammonites everywhere, and really large ones actually. So you can see the scale of my foot compared to them. They were just scattered all amongst the floor, and some were in pieces, some were whole, some were fragments. It was just incredible to kind of explore around, because everywhere I looked, there were just imprints of ammonites, casts of them, you know, actual pieces of them, and they are all very sea-worn. So all of these are exposed, and as soon as the tide comes in, they just will get completely submerged and just slowly worn away and eroded by the sea. But in a way, I think that, you know, made them so beautiful, because a lot of these, no one can collect these, you know, they're not going to come out of these rocks. They are too kind of eroded and weathered to, you know, even bother attempting to save them. But they'll be there for quite a while, and there's so much beauty in them as they are. And also on this same stretch of coast, there were tiny little ammonites. So you can see all the pieces here. So these ones were fairly crushed. So a lot of them were like paper thin, which means they're extremely fragile. So even if you do manage to get them out, you then have to prep them with paraloid really, really quickly. Otherwise, they'll just like fragment away. But again, they were just everywhere. And you can see in one kind of small area, there can be a lot of them. So the more you look, the more you see, basically. And I was just kind of like jumping around, and I was like, oh, here's an ammonite, and here's another ammonite, and here's another ammonite. And so very ammonite dominated this fossil hunting trip, but they are some of the best kind. So you can see here just ammonite after ammonite, just all over the rock face. Really incredible to see. And sometimes you can see like mass clusters of them, which is really kind of amazing. And I guess it must be due to the currents. When the, you know, creatures died, their shells must have kind of washed up as a group almost, and that's why sometimes you get these mass kind of death assemblages. Either that, or they all died together. Maybe, you know, a landslide or something kind of submerged them quickly, so they all kind of got trapped. But you can just see they are everywhere, and they were just really incredible, and a lot of them really nice quality. So you can see they're kind of really, you know, white in colour, the shells. So they were really nicely preserved, even though they were crushed. So as you can see, I was just filming, you know, my feet at all times, because everywhere I looked, there were fossils. Well, I say fossils as if multiple types. It was pretty much just ammonites, but you guys know me, I do love collecting ammonites. So you can see another large one here. And then I did manage to get one of these kind of crushed smaller ammonites out, And you can see it's a beautiful specimen, and I did make a YouTube short of me trying to prep that one, and it was not easy. So now we can see Kevin doing what he does best with a hammer. So we are now into the kind of harder rock layers where those larger ones you could see at the start were from. So these are, they're a lot better preserved, so they are in 3 dimensions, but they're a lot harder to find and a lot harder to get out. So here Kevin is assessing kind of the inside of these rocks to see if there's any cross sections of ammonites, to see if there's any pieces worth kind of the effort of getting them out. So he's just breaking up some of these boulders here to see if there's anything inside. Obviously, sometimes it's more successful than other times. So you can see Kevin going again with a chisel this time. So it's a lot of hard labour, these big boulders, because they have fracture lines, but they're very rarely along the fossil. So they'll kind of fracture in all these different ways, and it gives you a little bit of kind of insight into what's actually in that big kind of boulder, and you can then get an idea, is there half an ammonite in here, or like a cross section of one, and are we going to go through the effort of kind of hacking it? And in this case there was a lot of labour and not many ammonites, but you can see here there is a cross section, but it is so cemented in. So you can see we are trying to get it out, but I can tell you in advance this is too cemented. So you can see kind of the edge of the shell there, there is no weakness, it is just cemented into that rock. So if we fast forward a lot of time and effort, you can see here some large ammonite chunks that did come out. So again, you can see they're very fractured, very fragile, and we did try and collect as many pieces as we could, but there was only about a quarter of that ammonite. And then here Kevin is again trying to lift up one of the layers to see if there is something underneath. So we always look for kind of dish-like shapes. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with the Jurassic Coast, where you can get nodules and they normally form around a fossil. Similar scenario here, we're just seeing if there is anything in them. A lot of the time though, there is nothing, but that is the fun of it. It's kind of like opening a present and you don't know if there's a gift inside or not. See this one here again, it looks like a promising shape, could potentially be the edge of an ammonite in there, but it very quickly shows not to be. So you can see here the rocks flaking off. There were bits of ammonite there, but just coming off in lots of little pieces and not quite worth the time and effort. It's the sea got to this one before we could. So here we're about to pop the top off of this piece, and oh, there's definitely a fossil in there. So as you can see, that's the one side of the ammonite, the imprint, and then what's left in the rock is, I think it's a mixture of some whorls are in one side and other whorls are in the other side. So a little bit of a tricky fossil, this one. So most of that one is, I think, in the top piece, and then it's just one of the whorls is in the bottom piece. But you can see there, so you never know how these are going to turn out. You've got a nice keel of another ammonite in the bottom there, so you can see the lovely ribbing of that one. So it might be worth trying to get that piece out, but I think the larger one on the top has seen better days. So here Kevin is seeing if that one's going to split nicely or whether it's just going to fragment off. Oh, you can see it cracking. Let's have a look. How's it going to leave her? Well, hey! So there's another one, again in a similar state of disrepair, but a nice outer whorl. So that is one of the ones you saw on my prepping table. Unfortunately, the rest of the ammonite was too fragile, but I did take those outer pieces, and I'm going to hopefully piece as much of it together as I can. Now here we have a lovely dinner plate sized ammonite in pretty good condition, so we thought, but few taps of that chisel and it stood no chance. The actual surface of the ammonite was just so fractured from being weathered and attacked by the sea that as soon as we put any sort of vibrations through it, it just started to shatter on us. So we wanted to see how many pieces it would come out in to see if it was worth taking it home to piece back together. But you can see here that outer whorl is coming off in a lot of pieces, let alone the inside. I think the inner whorls are just not going to come apart, unfortunately. So I think that one we will leave. And last but certainly not least, we have the beautiful calcite crystals that I did show you. So I only took one of these pieces and I left the rest for hopefully another person to enjoy. But they were really beautiful, and I just kind of found this big boulder and I thought, oh, I'll see if it breaks nicely. And it did break nicely. I wish I got the actual break on camera. So that's all I got for you guys today. So obviously I've got a lot of prepping to do and a lot of jigsaw puzzles. So if you have any advice on how to kind of piece them together, do let me know. But I think it's just time and patience basically. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks. But I hope you're doing well. I'll link my social media down below if you'd like to follow me on there, as I do have a Twitter and an Instagram. But yeah, look after yourselves and hopefully I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.